Tonight, we're leaving the modern world behind. Introduce viewers to the peaceful atmosphere of medieval Europe just before dawn. Invite them to imagine waking in a small village sometime around the 13th century, where the day begins with glowing embers, morning mist, and the first crow of a rooster. Explain that this isn't the story of kings, castles, or famous battles, but of the ordinary farmers, bakers, blacksmiths, merchants, mothers, and children whose daily routines shaped the medieval world. Mention that many popular ideas about the Middle Ages are myths, and throughout the journey we'll separate fact from fiction while experiencing a full day in medieval life, from sunrise to bedtime. So, close your eyes, settle in, and let's begin another quiet journey into history. The rooster does not care that you are tired. In fact, if anything, it seems deeply committed to making sure nobody else gets any rest either. Long before the sun climbs over the hills, long before the sky even thinks about turning blue, that noisy bird is already shouting at the whole village like it has urgent news from the heavens. There are no alarm clocks here. No phone buzzing beside the bed. No gentle little reminder saying, "Good morning, please wake up." Just one very confident rooster, yelling at everyone like it owns the place. And honestly, it kind of does. Welcome to a medieval morning. Now, before the village fully wakes, take a slow look around. The air is cool and damp. A soft mist hangs low over the fields. The stars are fading one by one, and the first pale light of day is just beginning to touch the rooftops. For a moment, everything feels still, like the whole world is holding its breath. But not for long. Soon, this little village will wake up in a swirl of smoke, footsteps, animal noise, and the kind of daily chaos that only feels normal when you live here. It is not a large place. Maybe only a few dozen families live here. Everyone knows everyone else. They know who makes the best bread, whose cow keeps wandering into other people's gardens, and who always tells the same story every time they stop by the alehouse. In a village this small, privacy is basically a luxury item. If you sneeze too loudly, someone probably knows about it before breakfast. The homes are simple, but they do the job. Most are built from wood cut from nearby forests. Thick wooden beams hold the walls together. Between them is a mix of mud, straw, and sticks, packed tightly to keep out the wind. It is not fancy. Nobody is going to confuse it with a palace. But it keeps people dry enough, warm enough, and alive enough, which is really the main goal. Above each house sits a roof made from dried straw or reeds. This is called thatch. It works surprisingly well against rain, though it also gives birds plenty of places to hide. Every now and then, a curious chicken might end up somewhere it absolutely was not invited. Medieval life had a lot of that kind of thing. A lot of "why is that there? We live with it now." The houses lean a little this way and that. Nothing is perfectly straight. Medieval builders did not have laser levels or power tools. They had strong arms, simple tools, and a lot of patience. If a wall was a little crooked, well, that was just part of the charm. Or the problem. Depends on how much you like straight lines. As daylight slowly grows stronger, thin ribbons of gray smoke begin rising into the sky. One by one, fireplaces come to life. Families are waking up and feeding the fires that were kept alive through the night whenever possible. Fire is precious here. Starting one from scratch takes time and effort, so if you can keep a few hot coals alive until morning, you have already saved yourself a lot of trouble. The smell of wood smoke drifts through the village. It mixes with the fresh scent of damp grass and earth. It is the kind of smell that says morning has arrived. It is peaceful in its own rough, smoky way. Because villages also come with animals. Lots of animals. A pig wanders slowly down the dirt road, looking for something interesting to eat. A few chickens scratch at the ground like they are solving a very serious mystery. Geese loudly argue with each other over absolutely nothing. Somewhere nearby, a cow lets out a deep, long moo that rolls across the fields like a sleepy warning. If you were hoping for quiet birdsong and nothing else, do not worry. The birds are here too. They are just sharing the stage with every farm animal you can imagine. The roads are nothing like the smooth streets we know today. They are simply paths of packed dirt, worn down by years of feet, carts, and hooves passing over the same ground again and again. After heavy rain, they turn into mud so thick that every trip becomes a small adventure. Shoes sink into the earth. Wagon wheels leave deep tracks. Sometimes it is hard to tell where the road ends and the puddles begin. If you were expecting clean sidewalks, you may be about 700 years too early. As the village wakes up, doors begin to open. People step outside and stretch after sleeping through the cool night. Some carry buckets. Others carry tools. A few pause to chat with neighbors before the busy day begins. Nobody is in a hurry in the modern sense, but nobody is really idle either. There is always something to do. Life here follows the seasons more than the calendar. Spring means planting. Summer means long days in the fields. Autumn brings harvest, and with it, a kind of nervous hope that the crops will be enough. Winter brings cold winds, shorter days, and the constant question of whether the food stored away will last until warmth returns. Almost everything depends on farming. Beyond the houses stretch wide open fields. Some hold wheat. Others grow barley, oats, beans, or peas. Small gardens sit beside many homes, filled with onions, cabbage, herbs, and whatever else will grow in the local soil. These are not just pretty patches of green. They are survival. They are dinner. They are the reason the village keeps going. These fields are the heart of the village. They feed everyone. A good harvest means comfort, at least by medieval standards. A poor harvest means worry, hunger, and a lot of anxious faces staring at the sky. Every sunrise brings another chance to care for the crops that keep the whole community alive. But there is one building that stands out above all the others. The church. Even before you see it, you might hear it. A bell rings through the cool morning air. Its sound carries across the fields and into every corner of the village. The church is often the tallest building around, built from sturdy stone while most homes remain wooden. Its tower rises above the rooftops, making it easy to spot from far away. In a place where most things are low and simple, the church stands like a quiet reminder that this village belongs to something bigger than itself. For medieval villagers, the church is much more than a place to pray. It is where people gather, where weddings happen, where children are baptized, where neighbors meet, where news spreads faster than any messenger ever could. It is also where people mark the passing of time. Most villagers do not have watches, because watches do not exist yet. Instead, the church bell helps organize the day. When it rings, people know it is time for work, prayer, or an important gathering. In a world without clocks on every wall, that bell is a kind of heartbeat for the village. In many ways, the church is the center of village life, just as the fields are the center of survival. Around it sits a small open space where people meet before and after services. Nearby, there may be a tiny graveyard where generations of families rest together, reminding everyone that life moves in seasons, just like the crops. People are born, they work, they pray, they grow old, and they are laid to rest close to the same place where they once stood in the morning light. The village itself is not planned with neat streets or perfect squares. It has simply grown over many years. Houses appear wherever there is room. Paths twist between gardens, fences, barns, and wells. It feels natural, almost as if the village slowly grew out of the earth itself. Nothing here is polished, but everything has a purpose. Now the quiet morning is fading. The sky has turned golden. Smoke rises higher. Animals become louder. Voices fill the air. A farmer lifts a wooden plow onto his shoulder. Another leads a pair of oxen toward the fields. Women carry buckets to the well. Children hurry outside, already given small jobs before breakfast has even become a thought. The blacksmith unlocks his workshop. The baker prepares the first fresh loaves. Every person has something to do. There is no rush in the modern sense, but there is purpose. The sun is up and daylight is valuable. Every hour matters because when darkness returns, work will mostly stop. So the village moves with the morning, steady and familiar, each person stepping into the day they have known all their lives. And so, as another ordinary morning begins, the little village comes fully alive. The rooster has finished shouting. The church bell has spoken. The smoke curls into the brightening sky. A new day in the Middle Ages has begun, and almost everyone is already on their way to work. Now that the village is awake, let us step inside one of those little wooden houses. From the outside, it may not look like much. It is small. The roof sags a little. Smoke slips through tiny gaps in the thatch, and the walls are not exactly straight. But for the family living here, this is home. It has been home for years, and if they are lucky, it may stay in the family for generations. Push open the heavy wooden door. Creaks loudly, of course. Medieval doors seem to enjoy announcing every visitor. Inside, it is darker than you might expect. The windows are tiny, and many do not even have glass. Glass is expensive. Instead, some windows are covered with wooden shutters, oiled cloth, or thin sheets made from animal horn that let in a little light while keeping out the wind. Even during the day, the room feels dim. Most of the light comes from the fireplace sitting near the center of the house. That fire is the heart of the home. It gives warmth during cold mornings. It provides light after sunset. It cooks meals, dries wet clothes, and gives everyone a place to gather. Without it, life becomes much harder very quickly. The room smells of smoke because, honestly, there is almost always smoke. Chimneys exist in some places, especially wealthier homes, but many simple cottages let smoke drift upward before finding its own way out through the roof. It is not perfect, but people get used to it. If you lived here long enough, you probably would too. The furniture is simple. Do not expect soft couches or large dining tables. There may be a sturdy wooden table standing near the fire, a few stools, perhaps a rough bench, a chest for storing clothes and valuable items. That is about it. Every piece of furniture has a job. There is little room for decoration. If something takes up space, it needs to earn its place. Now you may be wondering where everyone sleeps. The answer is close together. Many peasant homes have only one main room. During the day, it is a kitchen, dining room, workshop, and living room. At night, it becomes the bedroom for the whole family. Mattresses are usually stuffed with straw, dried grass, or leaves. They are laid on simple wooden frames or sometimes directly on the floor. Soft? Not exactly. Comfortable enough after 12 hours of farm work? Probably. The straw inside these mattresses has to be changed from time to time. Otherwise, it becomes dusty, damp, and home to tiny creatures that absolutely did not pay rent. Bedbugs have been annoying humans for a very long time. Blankets are often made from wool. They can feel rough compared to modern fabrics, but they are warm, and warmth matters much more than softness during a freezing winter night. Parents and young children often sleep in the same space. Older children may share another bed nearby. Privacy, as we think of it today, is almost impossible. If someone snores, everyone knows. If a baby wakes up crying, everyone wakes up. If Grandpa starts talking in his sleep about that unusually large cabbage he grew 20 years ago, well, everyone gets to enjoy that story too. Life is shared in every possible way. Despite the crowded space, families are usually close. They spend nearly every hour together, working, eating, praying, and resting under the same roof. Family is not just about love. It is also about survival. Every extra pair of hands can help. Even young children have jobs. A 5-year-old might gather eggs. An older child could help carry water. Teenagers may already spend long hours working beside their parents in the fields. Nobody expects children to sit around doing nothing all day. Childhood exists, of course, but it often includes a basket, a bucket, or a broom. That does not mean children never have fun. They laugh. They chase chickens. They play simple games with sticks, stones, or handmade toys. Sometimes they invent games that probably make adults nervous, which, to be fair, children have been doing throughout history. Now, not every home looks like this. If you belong to a wealthy merchant or a local lord, life indoors feels very different. Larger houses may have several rooms instead of one. There could be real glass windows, better furniture, colorful cloth hanging on the walls, feather-filled mattresses instead of straw. Imagine sleeping on feathers after years on straw. It must have felt like floating on a very sleepy cloud. The richest families even have separate sleeping chambers, allowing parents, children, and guests to enjoy something truly rare in the Middle Ages: a little personal space. Still, even wealthy homes are much simpler than modern houses. There is no running water, no electric lights, no heating system quietly keeping every room warm. If the fire goes out, everyone notices. If winter arrives early, everyone feels it. No matter how rich you are, nature still has the final word. Back inside our village cottage, morning is moving quickly. Someone adds another log to the fire. Someone else sweeps yesterday's ashes into a small pile. A wooden bucket is carried outside to collect fresh water from the village well. Clothes are folded away. Tools are gathered. The house slowly changes from a place of rest into a place of work. This happens every single morning. The rhythm rarely changes. The sun rises. The family wakes. The fire burns. The chores begin. There is comfort in that routine, even if it is hard work. Before leaving, many families pause for a short prayer. Faith is woven into daily life, and asking for a safe day, good weather, or a healthy harvest feels as natural as breathing. Then the door opens once more. Cool morning air rushes inside. One by one, family members step out into the village. Some head toward the fields. Others visit the workshop. Children follow close behind, already carrying little baskets or wooden tools almost as big as they are. The house grows quiet again. Only the fire continues to crackle softly, waiting for everyone to return after another long day. For now, home has done its job. It has given shelter through the night, warmth against the cold, and a place where one family begins another ordinary day together. And as the smell of fresh smoke drifts through the open doorway, there is one question left to answer. After all this work, what exactly are they going to eat? After leaving the warmth of the little cottage, you might already be thinking about breakfast. After all, the rooster has screamed everyone awake. The family has made the fire. The children have started their chores. Surely it is time for a nice, hearty meal. Well, not always. One of the biggest surprises about medieval life is that breakfast was not the important meal we often think of today. In fact, for many people, especially adults, eating first thing in the morning was not always a habit. Some people believed a healthy adult should wait a while before eating. Others simply had too much work to do. There were animals to feed, water to carry, fires to tend, and fields waiting outside. Food could wait a little longer. Children, older people, and those doing very hard work were more likely to eat early. But even then, breakfast was usually small and simple. Nobody is making pancakes. There are no bowls of colorful cereal. Nobody is stopping by a coffee shop on the way to work. In fact, nobody even knows what coffee is yet. Instead, the most common food sitting on the table is something that appears at almost every meal. If medieval life had a mascot, it might honestly be a loaf of bread. Bread is everywhere. Rich or poor, young or old, almost everyone eats it every single day. Of course, not all bread is the same. If you are wealthy, your bread is lighter in color. It is made from finely milled wheat flour, soft on the inside with a pleasant crust. It is the kind of loaf that smells wonderful as soon as it comes out of the oven. If you are an ordinary farmer, your bread looks quite different. It is darker, heavier, made from barley, rye, oats, or whatever grain grows well nearby. Sometimes different grains are mixed together because that is simply what is available. Medieval bakers are practical people. They bake with what they have, not with what they wish they had. The bread is filling, and that matters more than appearance. It gives people the energy needed for long hours of work in the fields. Sometimes yesterday's bread becomes today's breakfast. Fresh bread is wonderful, but stale bread is never wasted. It can be dipped into soup, softened with broth, or eaten exactly as it is. Nothing goes to waste if it can still fill an empty stomach. Alongside the bread, many families eat something called pottage. Now, pottage may not sound very exciting. Imagine a large pot hanging over the fire. Inside are vegetables, herbs, beans, onions, and maybe a few grains. Everything slowly cooks together until it becomes thick and hearty. If the family is lucky, a small piece of meat might find its way into the pot. Notice I said a small piece. Despite what movies often show, most ordinary people do not eat large servings of meat every day. Animals are valuable. A chicken gives eggs. A cow gives milk. An ox helps plow the fields. You do not rush to eat something that is helping keep your family alive. So meat is often saved for special days, holidays, or celebrations. Most of the time, vegetables do the heavy lifting. The wonderful thing about pottage is that it never really has one recipe. Today's pot may include cabbage. Tomorrow it might contain peas. Next week someone adds carrots, leeks, or turnips. Whatever the garden provides eventually ends up in the pot. It quietly bubbles over the fire for hours, growing richer as more ingredients are added. Sometimes yesterday's leftovers simply become part of today's meal. The pot is almost like a family member. It is always there, always waiting, always cooking something. If you are wondering whether anyone gets tired of eating pottage every day, the answer is probably yes. But when food keeps you alive, you become less picky. Now, let us talk about something that surprises many people. What are they drinking? Many people have heard that medieval people never drank water because it was too dirty. That story sounds dramatic. It also is not completely true. Clean water absolutely existed. Villagers often collected water from wells, springs, or clear streams. A good well was one of the most valuable parts of any village, and people worked hard to keep it usable. Nobody wanted to poison the very place where the whole community collected water. That said, water quality could vary. Some places had cleaner sources than others. During certain times of the year, or in crowded towns, water could become unsafe. Because of this, many people also drank ale. Now, before you picture everyone stumbling around the village before sunrise, let us slow down a little. Medieval ale was usually much weaker than many modern beers. It was often called small ale, containing very little alcohol. Even children sometimes drank it because the brewing process involved boiling the liquid, making it a safer choice in some situations. Think of it less as party drinks and more as a very ordinary part of everyday life. A mug of small ale beside a piece of bread would not have seemed unusual at all. If fresh milk was available, some families enjoyed that too, especially children. And cheese? Cheese was another welcome guest at the table. Hard cheeses kept well for long periods, making them useful throughout the year. A slice of cheese with bread might not sound exciting by modern standards, but after hours of physical work, it tasted just fine. Simple food. Simple meals. But enough to keep another busy day moving forward. The food on the table changes with the seasons. That is simply how life works in the Middle Ages. Today, if you want strawberries in the middle of winter, you can probably find them in a supermarket. They may have traveled hundreds or even thousands of miles to get there. A medieval villager would find that idea completely unbelievable. If something is not growing, you are probably not eating it. Spring brings fresh greens and herbs after the long winter. People are happy to see them. After months of eating stored food, even a handful of fresh leaves feels like a small celebration. Summer fills gardens with vegetables. Peas, beans, onions, cabbage, and herbs become common sights. Chickens continue laying eggs, and cows produce milk that can be turned into butter or cheese. Autumn is the busiest and perhaps the happiest season of all. The harvest has arrived. Fields of grain are cut by hand. Apples are picked from trees. Nuts are gathered. Vegetables are pulled from the ground before the first hard frost can reach them. Nearly everyone helps. This is not just another farming job. This is the food that must last through the winter. Every basket matters. Every bundle of grain matters. If the harvest goes well, people breathe a little easier. If it does not, well, that is a different story. As winter arrives, fresh food becomes much harder to find. People depend on what they manage to store. Grain sits in barns. Beans are dried. Cheese is kept in cool places. Apples may be stored for as long as possible. Meat, when available, is often salted or smoked to help it last. Nothing is wasted. Not if it can still be eaten later. The menu becomes smaller during the cold months. But survival is more important than variety. In fact, medieval people become very good at making simple food last. A loaf of bread is never thrown away just because it has become hard. Yesterday's bread might become today's meal. Vegetables that look a little tired still end up in the cooking pot. Bones from roasted meat are boiled to make broth. Every little bit counts. Modern kitchens throw away surprising amounts of food. A medieval family would probably watch us clean out a refrigerator and quietly wonder if we had lost our minds. Of course, even the best planning cannot solve every problem. Sometimes the weather refuses to cooperate. Too much rain can drown crops before they are ready. Too little rain leaves fields dry and cracked. An early frost may destroy vegetables almost overnight. Storms, insects, or plant diseases can ruin months of hard work. When that happens, the whole village feels it. A poor harvest does not simply mean fewer choices for dinner. It can mean real hunger. People begin stretching what little food they have. Pottage becomes thinner. Bread grows smaller. Meals become less frequent. Parents often make sure children eat first, even if it means they go without. These difficult years remind everyone how closely their lives depend on nature. There are no giant warehouses filled with emergency supplies. No trucks bringing fresh food from another region. No grocery stores with shelves waiting to be restocked. If the harvest fails, life becomes uncertain very quickly. Thankfully, not every year is a bad one. Many years bring enough food for families to get by, even if their meals remain simple. And simple does not always mean unpleasant. Fresh bread pulled from a hot oven. A bowl of warm pottage on a cold morning. A piece of good cheese. A handful of apples picked straight from the tree. These are small comforts, but they are comforts all the same. Sometimes we imagine medieval people spending every day hungry and miserable. The truth is more balanced. Most people were not enjoying grand feasts every evening. But neither were they starving every single day. Life moved somewhere between those two extremes, always depending on the season, the weather, and a little bit of luck. There is one more myth worth clearing up before we leave the breakfast table. You have probably heard someone say that medieval food was bland because people did not have spices. That is only partly true. Ordinary villagers rarely had expensive spices from faraway lands. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg were luxury items that cost a great deal. But that does not mean food had no flavor. People used herbs they could grow themselves. A village garden was not just about growing food. It was also about making that food enjoyable. Even in a simple world, people liked a good meal. Because, honestly, humans have always been humans. Whether you live in a medieval village or a modern city, warm bread fresh from the oven smells amazing. That has never changed. Now the last pieces of bread disappear from the table. Wooden bowls are stacked aside. The cooking pot continues to bubble gently over the fire, ready for the next meal later in the day. Outside, the village has become much busier. The morning mist has almost disappeared. Oxen wait beside wooden plows. The blacksmith's hammer has begun ringing across the village. The mill wheel slowly turns in the nearby stream. People finish the last few bites of breakfast, wipe their hands on rough linen cloth, gather their tools, and step outside. Because breakfast, whether large or small, is only the beginning. The real work of the day is about to begin. The village has finished breakfast. The bowls have been cleared away. The last bite of bread has disappeared. Now comes the part that fills almost every hour of the day. If you could ask someone living in a medieval village what they do for a living, the answer would probably be very simple. I farm. And that would not be surprising at all. Most people in medieval Europe were farmers. In fact, if you looked around this little village, nearly every path eventually led to a field. The fields are waiting. So are the crops. And crops do not care if you feel sleepy. As the morning sun climbs higher, families walk together toward the open land surrounding the village. Some carry wooden hoes over their shoulders. Others pull carts filled with tools. Children hurry behind their parents, trying to keep up while also getting distracted by butterflies, frogs, or anything else that seems more interesting than work. Unfortunately for them, the weeds are not going to pull themselves. Farming in the Middle Ages is hard. Very hard. There are no tractors, no engines, no machines that can prepare an entire field before lunch. Almost everything is done by hand. Fields are plowed using heavy wooden plows, often pulled by teams of oxen. Horses are sometimes used too, especially later in the Middle Ages, but oxen are strong, steady, and easier for many villages to afford. The plow cuts into the soil. The farmer guides it carefully. Every long row takes patience and strength. Behind him, other family members may scatter seeds into the freshly turned earth. It is slow work, but slow work is still progress. The seasons decide almost everything. In spring, people prepare the ground and plant new crops. Summer is filled with weeding, repairing fences, and caring for growing plants. Autumn becomes a race against time as everyone works to bring in the harvest before cold weather arrives. Winter offers a little less work in the fields, but there are always tools to repair, animals to feed, firewood to gather, and next year's plans to think about. There is never a season with absolutely nothing to do. A farmer's work simply changes with the weather. Of course, not everyone spends the day planting grain. Every village depends on many different jobs. Listen carefully. Can you hear that steady ringing sound echoing across the village? Clang, clang, clang. That is the blacksmith. If the farmer grows the food, the blacksmith keeps almost everything else moving. Inside his workshop, the fire burns brighter than almost anywhere else in the village. The heat is incredible. Iron glows orange inside the forge. With powerful swings of his hammer, the blacksmith shapes hot metal into horseshoes, nails, knives, farming tools, door hinges, and countless other useful objects. It is loud work, sweaty work, probably not the best place to wear your nicest clothes. Without the blacksmith, broken tools stay broken. And broken tools mean slower work for everyone else. Not far away, another important worker has already started the day. The miller. A nearby stream turns a large wooden water wheel. Slowly, steadily, the wheel spins day after day. Inside the mill, heavy stones grind grain into flour. It looks almost magical if you have never seen one before. Pour grain in one side. Watch soft flour come out the other. Of course, it is not magic. It is careful engineering powered by flowing water. For medieval villagers, the mill is one of the most important buildings around. Without flour, there is no bread. And as we already know, bread is practically the unofficial national treasure of medieval life. Then there is the village carpenter. While the blacksmith shapes iron, the carpenter shapes wood. He builds carts, repairs doors, makes tables, creates barrels, builds fences. Even simple wooden spoons begin in his workshop. Everywhere you look in the village, you can probably find something made by his hands. Wood is one of the most useful materials in the medieval world. It becomes homes, furniture, tools, bridges, buckets, and even children's toys. A skilled carpenter is never short of work. Meanwhile, somewhere near the center of the village, another wonderful smell begins drifting through the air. Fresh bread. The baker has been busy since before sunrise. Large ovens stay warm for hours, allowing many loaves to bake together. The smell alone is enough to make people hungry all over again, even if they finished breakfast only a little while ago. It is probably one of the few jobs where your workplace smells better than everyone else's. Though standing beside a blazing hot oven in the middle of summer might make you question that opinion. Not everyone spends the day close to the village. Some workers head out with the animals. The shepherd begins leading a flock of sheep toward open hillsides and grassy fields. The sheep move together in a slow, fluffy crowd, stopping every few steps to nibble fresh grass. If you have ever tried to get one sheep to go in the right direction, imagine trying to convince 100 of them. It takes patience. A lot of patience. The shepherd's day is quiet compared to the blacksmith's noisy workshop, but it is no easier. He keeps watch for wolves, keeps the flock together, and makes sure none of the animals wander too far away. Sheep are valuable. Their wool becomes clothing. Their milk can be made into cheese. Every healthy sheep is an important part of the village economy. Back in the village, another kind of work is happening indoors. The weaver sits beside a wooden loom. Thread after thread passes through the frame. Slowly, carefully, a piece of cloth begins to appear. It may not look exciting at first. In fact, watching someone weave can almost feel hypnotic. The steady movement of hands, the soft clicking of the loom, and the growing fabric all seem to move at their own peaceful rhythm. But this cloth will soon become shirts, blankets, sacks, or cloaks. Making fabric takes time. Far more time than most people imagine. Before weaving even begins, someone has to shear the sheep, clean the wool, comb it, spin it into thread, and only then can it be woven into cloth. A single piece of clothing represents many hours of work. That is one reason people take good care of what they own. A torn sleeve is repaired. A worn-out shirt is patched. Nothing useful is thrown away if it can be fixed. As you walk through the village, nearly everyone seems busy. The blacksmith hammers iron. The carpenter shapes wood. The baker pulls warm loaves from the oven. The miller grinds grain. The shepherd watches the flock. The weaver works patiently at the loom. Every job depends on another. The baker needs the miller. The farmer needs the blacksmith. The carpenter needs the woodsman. The shepherd supplies the weaver. No one truly works alone. The village survives because everyone contributes something. One thing that surprises many people today is how early work begins. There is no magical age when children suddenly become adults and start helping. Instead, work slowly becomes part of everyday life from a young age. A little boy may carry water from the well. A little girl may gather eggs from the chicken coop. Older children scare birds away from the fields, collect firewood, or help care for younger brothers and sisters. As they grow older, their responsibilities grow with them. By the time they become teenagers, many already know the skills they will use for the rest of their lives. Some boys become apprentices. They might spend years learning from a blacksmith, carpenter, mason, or baker. The lessons are practical. Watch carefully. Practice often. Make mistakes. Learn from them. Repeat. There are no classrooms with rows of desks. The workshop itself is the classroom. The master craftsman is the teacher. The finished product is the final exam. Girls also learn valuable skills from an early age, often by working beside their mothers or other women in the household. They learn cooking, spinning, gardening, caring for animals, preserving food, and managing a busy home. Every member of the family has a role. Not because someone made a schedule, because life depends on it. Even so, work is not endless misery. People talk while they work. They sing. They tell stories. Neighbors help one another during the busiest times of the year. Harvest season, especially, becomes a shared effort. Entire families work side by side from sunrise until evening, knowing that everyone's winter depends on what they accomplish together. There is pride in good work. A straight fence. A sharp plow. A warm loaf of bread. A well-made cloak. These things matter. Doing your job well earns respect from the people around you. As the morning slowly turns toward midday, the village settles into its familiar rhythm. The sound of hammers echoes from the forge. The water wheel keeps turning. Oxen pull heavy plows through dark soil. Sheep graze peacefully under the watchful eye of the shepherd. Children run small errands between adults who rarely stop moving for long. It is a world powered almost entirely by human hands, strong backs, and patient determination. There are no engines humming in the background. No machines doing the heavy lifting. Every loaf of bread, every wooden cart, every iron nail, and every wool cloak begins with someone's hard work. For the people of the Middle Ages, this is simply normal life. They do not dream of easier jobs because they have never known anything different. This is the world they were born into. And tomorrow morning, when that rooster starts shouting all over again, they will wake up and do it all once more. But while many of the men are working in the fields, workshops, and pastures, another busy world is unfolding much closer to home. It is time to step inside once again and see how women, children, and the household keep the village running from sunrise to sunset. As many of the men disappear into the fields and workshops, you might think the village suddenly becomes quiet. Not even close. In fact, for many women, the busiest part of the day is only just beginning. A medieval home does not run by itself. There are no washing machines quietly spinning in the corner. No refrigerators keeping food fresh. No supermarkets just down the road. Every single task takes time. A lot of time. The fire that warmed the family through the night needs fresh wood. Water has to be collected from the village well. Meals have to be planned, cooked, and served. Animals still need feeding. Children need watching. Clothes need repairing. The list never really ends. So, let us follow one family through an ordinary day. The first stop is the well. A woman picks up 2 wooden buckets and walks along the dirt path. She is not alone. Several neighbors are already there, lowering buckets into the cool water below. The well is more than a place to collect water. It is also where news travels. Someone talks about a cow that wandered into the cabbage patch. Someone else mentions an upcoming church feast. Another neighbor shares the latest rumor, which may or may not be true. Honestly, if medieval villages had social media, it would probably just be the well. Once the buckets are full, they must be carried home. That sounds simple until you remember that water is heavy. Very heavy. And this trip is made again, and again, and again. Every day. Back at the house, the cooking begins. The fireplace is brought back to life if the flames have grown weak. A large iron pot hangs over the fire. Inside, another batch of pottage slowly starts to cook. It may look familiar because pottage has returned. You are going to see quite a lot of it during medieval life. Different vegetables are chopped and added to the pot. Herbs from the garden bring extra flavor. If the family has a little cheese, some fresh milk, or a small piece of salted meat, those might be added too. Nothing is measured with fancy cups or spoons. Most recipes live inside people's memories. A little of this, a handful of that. Taste it. Hope for the best. Somehow, dinner usually works out. Cooking alone can take hours because food cooks slowly over an open fire. While the meal quietly bubbles away, there is no shortage of other work. A basket filled with dirty clothes waits nearby. Laundry in the Middle Ages is not exactly relaxing. There is no washing machine, no pleasant scented detergent. Clothes are scrubbed by hand using water, soap made from animal fat and wood ash, and a great deal of effort. Heavy wool clothing becomes even heavier when wet. By the end of laundry day, your arms have probably had a better workout than most modern gym memberships could provide. Once clean, the clothes are hung outside to dry whenever the weather allows. If rain arrives unexpectedly, everyone starts running. Another important job is spinning wool into thread. A woman sits beside a spinning wheel, or in earlier times, a simple drop spindle, and gently twists soft wool into long strands of yarn. It is careful work that can continue while talking with neighbors or keeping an eye on small children playing nearby. That thread will eventually become cloth. The cloth will become clothing. And those clothes may last for years if they are cared for properly. Nothing is wasted. If a shirt tears, it is patched. If a blanket wears thin, it is repaired. If something truly cannot be fixed anymore, pieces of it may still become cleaning rags or stuffing for mattresses. People become very good at giving old things new jobs. Many homes also have small gardens. These gardens may not be large, but they are incredibly important. Cabbage, onions, beans, perhaps a few apple trees nearby. These little patches of land help feed the family throughout the year. Someone weeds the garden. Someone waters the plants. Someone checks for insects trying to enjoy the vegetables before the family does. The chickens also need attention. Eggs are collected each morning. The hens are fed. Any wandering birds are gently encouraged to stop exploring the neighbor's yard for the third time this week. Life with animals requires patience. Children, meanwhile, are rarely sitting still. The youngest may play with handmade dolls, wooden animals, hoops, or simple carved toys. Others invent games using stones, sticks, or whatever happens to be lying nearby. Children have always been wonderfully creative when adults are too busy to entertain them. But play does not last all day. Soon enough, someone calls their name. There are eggs to gather, firewood to collect, water to carry, a younger brother to watch, a goose that has somehow escaped again. Childhood in the Middle Ages includes laughter, games, scraped knees, and plenty of chores. As children grow older, those small jobs slowly become bigger ones. A boy may begin helping his father in the fields or learning a trade from a local craftsman. A girl often learns the many skills needed to manage a household, prepare food, care for animals, spin wool, and preserve supplies for winter. There is no graduation ceremony. No moment where someone announces, "Congratulations, you are now an adult." Responsibility simply grows a little more each year. By the afternoon, nearly every member of the household has been busy for hours. The fire is still burning. The cooking pot is still simmering. Fresh water waits in wooden buckets. Clean clothes flutter gently outside. Children move between work and play with surprising energy. It is easy to imagine medieval women spending their days quietly waiting at home. The truth is very different. Running a household is skilled work. Demanding work. Essential work. Without it, the family cannot function. Without clean clothes, warm meals, stored food, healthy children, and a well-managed home, even the hardest working farmer would struggle. Every member of the household depends on everyone else. As the afternoon sun climbs higher, the village continues its steady rhythm. Fields stretch into the distance. Smoke curls from cottage chimneys. The sound of spinning wheels, children's laughter, barking dogs, and distant hammer blows blend together into the music of ordinary medieval life. It may not be the life of kings or knights, but it is the life that most people actually lived. And before the day is over, many of these families will leave their homes and make their way toward a place where the whole community comes together. The busy streets of the medieval town. So far, we have spent our day in a quiet little village. Life there moves at a gentle pace. The fields stretch to the horizon. Chickens wander wherever they please. Everyone knows everyone, and if someone bakes fresh bread, the whole village probably knows about it within the hour. But not everyone lives in a village. Some people live somewhere much louder, much busier, and much smellier. Welcome to a medieval town. As you leave the peaceful countryside behind, the road slowly becomes busier. Farmers guide carts loaded with grain. Merchants lead pack horses carrying bundles of cloth. Pilgrims walk with staffs in hand, heading toward distant churches and shrines. Travelers from nearby villages all seem to be moving in the same direction. Soon, the town walls come into view. Many medieval towns are surrounded by thick stone walls built for protection. Tall towers watch over the roads, and large wooden gates control who comes in and who goes out. At night, these gates are often closed, making the town much safer from thieves or unwanted visitors. During the day, however, the gates are wide open. People stream in and out almost constantly. As you step through the entrance, the first thing you notice is the noise. Villages are peaceful. Towns are not. Merchants call out to passing customers. Blacksmiths pound glowing iron. Dogs bark. Children laugh and chase one another through narrow streets. Horses clatter across uneven stones. Church bells ring somewhere above the rooftops. Everyone seems to be talking at once. It feels alive. The streets themselves are much narrower than modern roads. Many are only wide enough for a cart to squeeze through. Houses stand close together, sometimes leaning toward one another as if they are sharing a secret. Some upper floors even stick out over the street below. If you stood in the middle and stretched out your arms, you might feel like you could almost touch both sides. The buildings are taller than the cottages back in the village. Many have shops on the ground floor and living spaces above. A baker may live upstairs while selling warm bread downstairs. A shoemaker repairs boots below and sleeps only a few steps away. Work and home often exist in the very same building. Now, take a deep breath. Actually, maybe do not. One thing medieval towns are famous for is their smell. There are no modern sewer systems. No garbage trucks arriving every Tuesday morning. Waste has to go somewhere, and unfortunately, that somewhere is not always very far away. Animals still wander the streets. Horses leave little reminders that they passed through. Markets produce piles of scraps. Open drains carry dirty water away whenever they can. On a hot summer day, your nose is going to have a memorable experience. That said, medieval towns are not simply giant piles of mud and garbage, as they are sometimes shown in movies. People do sweep streets. Many towns have rules about where waste should be dumped. Local officials try to keep public areas reasonably clean. It is simply much harder when thousands of people live close together. Now let us follow the crowd. Everyone seems to be heading toward the marketplace. This is the beating heart of the town. Rows of wooden stalls fill the open square. Colorful cloth hangs from one booth. Fresh vegetables fill another. A butcher displays cuts of meat. Nearby, a fish seller loudly promises that today's catch is the freshest anyone has ever seen. Whether that is true, well, he probably made the same promise yesterday. Markets are full of sound. People bargain over prices. Coins change hands. Neighbors stop to chat. Traveling merchants show goods from faraway places. If you have enough money, you might even find spices from distant lands, fine wine, colorful fabrics, or beautiful glassware. For many villagers, a trip to the market is exciting. It is not only a place to shop. It is a place to hear news, to meet friends, to watch entertainers, to see things that rarely appear in small villages. If you spend enough time here, you may hear stories from travelers who have crossed mountains, sailed oceans, or visited cities you have never even heard of. The medieval world is more connected than many people imagine. Trade keeps these towns alive. One group plays a very important role in making sure that trade runs smoothly. The guilds. A guild is a group of skilled workers who practice the same craft. There are guilds for bakers, guilds for blacksmiths, guilds for weavers, guilds for carpenters, and many more. Think of them as part professional club, part training school, and part quality control. If you want to become a skilled craftsman, joining the right guild can shape your entire future. Young apprentices spend years learning their trade. First they watch, then they practice. Eventually, after many years of hard work, they may become skilled enough to open a workshop of their own. Guilds also help make sure that products meet certain standards. If a baker sells poor bread or a carpenter builds weak furniture, their reputation suffers quickly. In a medieval town, reputation is almost as valuable as money. Walk a little farther, and you will find one of the busiest places in town, the inn. Travelers need somewhere to eat, rest, and spend the night. Inside, the room is filled with conversation. People share stories from the road. Merchants discuss business. Pilgrims exchange news from distant churches. A warm meal and a place beside the fire are welcome comforts after a long journey. Sometimes strangers become friends over a simple bowl of stew. Sometimes they argue over whose horse is blocking the doorway. Either way, the inn is rarely quiet. If the town sits beside a river, you may notice another busy place. The bridge. Bridges are more than simple crossings. They are centers of trade. People, animals, carts, and goods all pass through them every day. Some even have small shops built directly on top, making the bridge itself feel like another street. As the afternoon continues, church bells once again echo through the town. Their sound reaches every corner, rising above the chatter of merchants and the clatter of horses. For a brief moment, it almost feels like the entire town pauses to listen. Life here is crowded, noisy, busy, sometimes dirty, but it is also full of opportunity. Unlike the quiet rhythm of village life, towns bring together people from different places, different trades, and different backgrounds. Ideas travel here. Goods travel here. Stories travel here. And when the day's work is finally over, these same streets will slowly grow quieter as families head home. But before we leave the town behind, there is one thing that catches your eye almost immediately: the clothes. Some people wear plain brown wool. Others walk past in bright blue, deep red, or rich green cloaks. A single glance at what someone is wearing can tell you far more than you might expect. So let us slow down for a moment and take a closer look at what medieval people really wore. As you walk through the busy streets of the medieval town, it does not take long to notice something interesting. Not everyone is dressed the same. In fact, you can often guess a person's job, wealth, or social status before they even say a single word. Their clothes tell the story. Today, we wear clothing for comfort, fashion, or maybe because it happened to be the first clean shirt we found this morning. Medieval people cared about comfort too, but clothing also showed where you belonged in society. It was almost like wearing your life story. Let us start with the people you would see the most. Ordinary villagers. Most peasants wear clothes made from wool. Wool is warm. It lasts a long time, and sheep are common across much of medieval Europe. It is not the soft wool you might imagine from a modern sweater. Much of it feels rough against the skin. Still, when winter arrives and cold winds sweep across the fields, nobody complains too much. Being warm is far more important than being fashionable. Under the wool, many people wear linen. Linen is made from the flax plant. It feels lighter than wool and is often used for shirts, undergarments, and simple head coverings. Since linen sits closest to the skin, it is usually washed more often than heavy outer clothing. That probably makes both the clothing and the people wearing it a little happier. Men often wear a long tunic that reaches somewhere around the knees. It is tied with a leather belt around the waist. From that belt hangs a small knife, a pouch for coins, or other useful tools needed throughout the day. When you do not have pockets, a good belt becomes surprisingly important. Women usually wear longer dresses that reach the ankles. Over the dress, many wear an apron while working around the home or garden. Married women often cover their hair with a veil, scarf, or cloth. Hair coverings are common in many places and are considered a normal part of daily life. When the weather turns cold, everyone reaches for a cloak. A thick wool cloak fastened with a simple pin helps keep out wind and rain. It may not stop every icy breeze, but it certainly does a better job than standing outside and hoping for the best. Now let us look down. Or perhaps, not shoes. Many poorer villagers own only one pair of leather shoes. Some go barefoot during warmer months, especially children. Shoes are valuable. Leather takes time to prepare. A skilled shoemaker spends hours making each pair. People repair worn shoes again and again before finally replacing them. A good pair might last for years if treated carefully. Now imagine someone walking toward you wearing bright blue clothing. That catches your attention immediately. Color means something. Many people think medieval clothing was always gray, brown, or dull. That is not really true. People loved color. The challenge was making it. Natural dyes came from plants, roots, berries, flowers, insects, and even certain kinds of shellfish. Yellow could come from plants. Green might be made by combining different dyes. Blue often came from a plant called woad. Some colors were easier and cheaper to produce than others. Bright, rich colors usually cost more, and that meant wealthier people could afford them more often. One color stood above the rest. Purple. For centuries, true purple dye was incredibly expensive because it came from tiny sea snails found in parts of the Mediterranean. Producing enough dye for even one piece of clothing required thousands of them. Imagine collecting thousands of tiny snails just to make a fancy cloak. That is dedication. Or perhaps just a very unusual hobby. Because of its high cost, purple became closely connected with royalty and great wealth. The richer you were, the finer your clothing became. A wealthy merchant may wear soft wool dyed in rich colors. A noble might wear expensive silk imported from distant lands. Gold embroidery decorates sleeves. Fine fur lines winter cloaks. Jewelry sparkles in the sunlight. Everything is carefully made to impress. These clothes are not just comfortable. They are statements. They quietly announce, I am important. Even without speaking. Some medieval rulers become so concerned about showing social rank that they create special clothing laws. These are called sumptuary laws. The idea is simple. Certain fabrics, colors, or decorations are reserved for certain groups of people. If you are a common farmer, you are not supposed to dress like a noble. If you are a wealthy merchant, there may still be limits on what you can wear. The goal is to make social differences easy to see. Whether people always followed those rules, that is another story. Humans have always enjoyed bending fashion rules whenever they can. Children, meanwhile, wear much simpler clothing. Young boys and girls often dress in loose tunics or gowns that allow them to move easily while helping with chores or playing games. As they grow older, their clothing slowly begins to resemble that of adults. There is no separate clothing industry designed especially for teenagers. You simply grow into the next stage of life. One piece at a time. Clothing is also expensive enough that families treasure every item they own. When a sleeve tears, it is sewn back together. When knees wear thin, patches are added. Older clothes are passed down from older brothers to younger ones. A mother's dress may eventually become clothing for her children. Nothing useful is wasted. Needles, thread, and careful hands keep garments alive for many years. Washing clothes is not something people do every day. Heavy wool garments are difficult to clean and can shrink if handled carelessly. Instead, people often brush dirt away, air clothing outside, and wash linen garments more frequently. A well-cared-for cloak can survive years of daily use. And because clothing takes so much work to make, people usually own far fewer outfits than we do today. Many ordinary people have only 2 or 3 complete sets of clothing. One for everyday work, one for church or special occasions, and perhaps another that has been patched so many times it has become impossible to guess its original color. Still, people take pride in looking their best. Before attending church, a wedding, or an important market day, families clean their clothes, brush away dust, and straighten every fold they can. Looking neat is a sign of respect, not just for yourself, but for the people around you. So the next time someone says everyone in the Middle Ages walked around wearing nothing but dirty brown rags, you can smile a little. The truth is far more colorful. People cared about appearance. They repaired their clothes. They enjoyed bright colors whenever they could afford them. And they understood that what you wore could tell the world exactly who you were. As the afternoon slowly moves toward evening, another question begins to appear. After working in dusty fields, smoky workshops, and crowded streets all day, how did medieval people actually stay clean? The answer may surprise you far more than their wardrobe ever did. After spending the whole day walking through busy streets, working in dusty fields, and standing beside smoky fireplaces, you might be wondering something very important. When did medieval people actually take a bath? If movies have taught us anything, the answer would probably be never. According to popular stories, everyone in the Middle Ages smelled terrible, never washed, and happily wandered around covered in dirt from head to toe. It makes for an entertaining movie, but history tells a different story. Were medieval people as clean as we are today? Did they completely ignore bathing? Also no. In fact, many people liked being clean just as much as we do. The difference was that staying clean took much more effort. Let us start with the simplest habit of all: washing your hands and face. For many people, this was part of the daily routine. A wooden bowl filled with fresh water often sat inside the home. Before eating, after working, or before attending church, people could wash away some of the dirt collected during the day. It was not a long, relaxing shower, but it helped. Combing your hair was another ordinary habit. Wooden combs were common, and people used them to keep their hair neat and remove dirt. Looking tidy mattered, not just for appearance, but because cleanliness was often connected with good manners and self-respect. Now let us talk about baths. Baths. Many medieval towns had public bathhouses. Imagine a large building filled with wooden tubs, warm water, and plenty of steam. People came here to wash, relax, and sometimes simply enjoy spending time with friends. It was almost like a medieval version of a neighborhood spa, though probably with fewer scented candles. And definitely no relaxing background music. Some bathhouses even served food and drinks. Visitors could enjoy a warm meal after their bath or sit and chat with neighbors for hours. For many people, bathing was both practical and social. Not everyone visited bathhouses regularly, of course. People living in small villages often washed at home using wooden tubs, buckets of heated water, or nearby rivers during warmer months. Heating enough water for a full bath took time. Someone had to carry the water, heat it over the fire, pour it into the tub, then repeat the whole process several more times. By the time the bath was finally ready, you almost deserved another one. That is one reason full baths were less common than simple daily washing. Soap also existed. It was usually made from animal fat mixed with wood ash. It was not the sweet-smelling soap bars we know today. Still, it cleaned dirt surprisingly well. People also washed clothes using similar homemade soaps. The smell may not have reminded you of fresh flowers, but clean was clean. Now, let us visit someone you definitely hope you do not need too often. The barber. Today, barbers mostly cut hair. In the Middle Ages, they did a little bit of everything. A barber might trim your beard, cut your hair, pull a painful tooth, treat a wound, or even perform a small surgery. That sounds like a strange combination today. But medieval medicine worked very differently. The famous red and white barber pole is even said to have its roots in these old medical practices. If you ever complained about waiting too long for a haircut, at least nobody offered to remove one of your teeth while you were there. For more serious illnesses, people visited physicians. These doctors studied medicine, often at universities if they could afford the education. They examined patients, offered advice, and prescribed treatments based on the medical knowledge of the time. Some of their ideas were surprisingly thoughtful. Others, not so much. Many believed the human body was controlled by 4 bodily fluids called humors. If those humors became unbalanced, illness followed. To restore balance, doctors sometimes recommended special diets, herbs, or even bloodletting. Removing blood. Thankfully, modern medicine has moved on. Herbal remedies were also very common. People knew a great deal about local plants. Mint helped settle upset stomachs. Sage was used for sore throats. Willow bark helped reduce pain and fever. Today we know willow bark contains a natural ingredient similar to the one used to make aspirin. Sometimes traditional knowledge worked surprisingly well. Monasteries played an important role in healthcare too. Monks carefully grew medicinal herbs in large gardens. They copied medical books by hand and cared for the sick whenever possible. For travelers, the poor, or those with nowhere else to go, monasteries often became places of comfort and healing. Of course, medieval medicine had serious limits. Doctors did not understand bacteria. They knew nothing about viruses. There were no antibiotics. Even a small cut could become dangerous if it became infected. Childbirth carried great risks. Simple illnesses that are easily treated today could become life-threatening. Life expectancy was lower than ours, not because people refused to wash, but because medical science still had a very long journey ahead. Even so, medieval people did not simply accept sickness without trying to fight it. They cleaned wounds as best they could, used herbs passed down through generations, prayed for healing, looked after family members. and hoped tomorrow would bring better health. So the next time someone tells you that everyone in the Middle Ages lived covered in mud and never touched water, you will know the truth is much more interesting. People washed. People bathed. People cared about looking respectable. They simply lived in a world where staying clean demanded far more time and effort than turning a modern shower handle. As evening begins to settle over the town, another familiar sound drifts through the cool air. The church bell. Once again, its steady ringing reminds everyone that work is not the only thing shaping medieval life. Faith touches nearly every hour of every day. And that is exactly where our journey goes next. As the church bell echoes across the village and town, almost everyone hears it. The farmer in the field pauses for a moment. The blacksmith briefly lifts his hammer from the anvil. The baker looks up from the warm oven. Children stop their games, even if only for a few seconds. The sound reaches nearly every corner of medieval life. That is because religion is not simply something people think about once a week. It is woven into almost every part of the day. To understand the Middle Ages, you have to understand one simple fact. The church is everywhere. It stands at the center of villages. It overlooks busy towns. Its bells mark the passing of time. Its teachings guide how people live, work, marry, celebrate, and even how they hope to die. For most people, faith is not a hobby. It is simply life. The day itself often begins with prayer. Before heading into the fields, many families gather for a quiet moment around the fire. Some make the sign of the cross. Others softly recite familiar prayers they have known since childhood. It does not take long, but it reminds everyone that the day ahead is in God's hands. As the hours pass, the church bell continues to ring. Without clocks hanging on every wall, bells become one of the easiest ways to measure the day. The ringing tells people when it is time for prayer, when an important service is beginning, or when something unusual has happened. A wedding, a funeral, or perhaps news that the whole village needs to hear. In many ways, the bell is the heartbeat of the community. Every Sunday, people gather for Mass. For many villagers, this is the one day when nearly everyone comes together in the same place. People put on their cleanest clothes. Children are reminded to behave. Neighbors greet one another outside the church before slowly finding their places inside. The church itself feels different from the simple cottages outside. Stone walls keep the air cool. Sunlight shines through colorful windows in larger churches. Candles flicker gently. The smell of incense drifts through the room. Voices rise together in prayer and song. Even someone who cannot read can understand that this is a special place. Most ordinary people cannot read Latin, the language used during many church services. But that does not stop them from understanding the importance of what is happening. They recognize familiar prayers. They know the stories from the Bible because priests explain them through sermons, paintings, stained glass windows, and carved statues. In a world where books are rare and expensive, pictures become powerful teachers. Every wall seems to tell a story. One window may show the life of a saint. Another may show Noah's Ark. Another the birth of Jesus. History, faith, and art all come together in one place. The church calendar also shapes the entire year. Life is not counted only by months or seasons. It is marked by holy days and festivals. Christmas celebrates the birth of Christ. Easter remembers the resurrection. Other days honor different saints whose stories inspire local communities. Some feast days are joyful celebrations. Church bells ring. Families gather. Special meals are prepared. People enjoy music, dancing, and games after religious services. After weeks of hard work in the fields, these celebrations bring welcome moments of rest. Not every day is a feast, however. There are also periods of fasting. During these times, People eat simpler meals and often avoid meat. Fish becomes much more common on the table. The church teaches that these quieter seasons are times for reflection, prayer, and self-control. Even food follows the rhythm of faith. Pilgrimages are another important part of medieval life. Some people dream of visiting famous holy places, a local shrine, a great cathedral, or even distant cities like Rome or Jerusalem if they can afford the long and dangerous journey. These trips can take weeks, sometimes months. Pilgrims walk dusty roads carrying little more than a walking stick, a bag, and hope. Along the way they meet strangers, sleep in inns or monasteries, and hear stories from places far beyond their own village. For many, the journey is just as important as the destination. Faith also shapes how people understand the world around them. A good harvest is seen as a blessing. A terrible storm may be understood as a warning. When illness spreads through a village, people pray for protection as well as seeking whatever medical help they can find. Modern science has not yet explained many natural events. Faith fills those unanswered questions. One thing many medieval people think about often is the afterlife. Heaven. And for many Christians, purgatory. These ideas are not distant or abstract. They feel very real. Life can be difficult and uncertain. Wars happen. Diseases spread. Accidents occur without warning. Believing in an eternal life beyond this one offers comfort during hard times. People hope to live good lives, care for their neighbors, confess their sins, and prepare their souls for what comes next. Priests play an important role beyond leading church services. They baptize newborn children, bless marriages, visit the sick, comfort grieving families, and conduct funerals when someone dies. From the beginning of life to the very end, the church walks beside the community. Monasteries add another layer to this world of faith. Behind their quiet stone walls, monks and nuns live lives devoted to prayer, study, and work. They grow herbs in peaceful gardens, care for travelers, copy books by hand with incredible patience. Some manuscripts take months or even years to complete. Without these careful scribes, many ancient books might have disappeared forever. Their quiet work helps preserve knowledge for future generations. Of course, medieval faith is not always peaceful. People sometimes fear sin. They worry about making the wrong choices. Some become deeply concerned about divine punishment. Religion brings hope and comfort, but it can also bring worry in a world where life often feels uncertain. Even so, for most people, faith is not something forced into every moment. It is simply the way the world makes sense. It explains the changing seasons, the passing years, the joy of harvest, the sadness of loss, the mystery of life itself. As evening settles over the village once again, candles begin glowing inside homes. Families gather around the fire. Some offer one final prayer before the day ends. Outside, the church stands quietly beneath the darkening sky, its bell now silent after another busy day. Tomorrow morning it will ring again, and life will begin once more. But not every day in the Middle Ages is peaceful. Sometimes people break the law. Sometimes neighbors argue. Sometimes crimes are committed. And when that happens, medieval justice is waiting. So far, our journey through the Middle Ages has been fairly peaceful. We have watched farmers work the fields. Families gather around warm fires. Children chase chickens through the village. Church bells ring across the countryside. It almost feels calm enough to fall asleep to. But people have always been people. And wherever people live together, someone eventually steals a chicken, or starts an argument over a fence, or insists that the neighbor's pig somehow ended up in the wrong garden. Not every day is peaceful. So, what happens when someone breaks the law? Well, the answer depends on where you live and what you have done. There are no police cars driving through medieval villages. No emergency phone number to call. No detectives studying fingerprints with bright laboratory lights. Justice works very differently. In a small village, everyone knows everyone else. That makes it surprisingly difficult to hide bad behavior. If someone steals a sack of grain, chances are half the village notices before sunset. News travels quickly, sometimes even faster than the rooster. When a disagreement happens, the first step is often trying to solve it locally. Neighbors talk. Village elders listen. The local lord or his officials may step in if the problem grows more serious. Many disputes are not about dangerous crimes at all. They're about land, animals, property, or money. One farmer believes his neighbor moved the boundary marker between their fields. Another claims someone's cow destroyed his vegetables. A family argues over an inheritance. Life can become surprisingly complicated even without email. For more serious matters, people may appear before a local court. These courts are usually held in a public place where members of the community can watch. The lord of the manor, his steward, or another local official listens to both sides before making a decision. Witnesses are important. Since there are no security cameras, people rely heavily on what neighbors saw or heard. Your reputation matters a great deal. If you are known as an honest person, others are more likely to believe your story. If you have spent years causing trouble, well, the court may look at you a little differently. One important official in many parts of medieval England is the sheriff. Sheriffs really did exist. Long before cowboy movies. The sheriff helps keep order, collects taxes, carries out court decisions, and helps enforce the law across the local area. The job is difficult. Roads are rough. Travel takes time. And keeping everyone happy is probably impossible. Now let us talk about punishments. Many people imagine every crime ending with dramatic executions. Thankfully, that is not how most cases work. For smaller offenses, fines are very common. If someone damages another person's property or breaks a local rule, paying money may settle the matter. Money has a wonderful way of ending certain arguments. When people cannot pay a fine, other punishments may follow. One of the most famous is the stocks. You have probably seen them in movies. A large wooden frame locks around a person's hands and sometimes their feet. The offender sits in the village square where everyone can see them. The real punishment is not physical pain. It is embarrassment. Neighbors walk past. Children point and whisper. Someone may laugh. Someone else may shake their head in disappointment. Occasionally, less friendly villagers throw rotten vegetables. If you have ever had a bad day at work, at least nobody threw an old cabbage at you. Public humiliation is meant to discourage others from breaking the rules. The message is clear. Behave yourself, or everyone will know exactly what happened. For more serious crimes, punishments become much harsher. Thieves may lose valuable property. Repeat offenders can face severe penalties. Violent crimes such as murder receive the strongest punishments available under the law. The exact sentence depends on where you live, the local customs, and the time period. The Middle Ages lasted for many centuries, and laws changed from place to place. Justice is not exactly the same in every kingdom. One unusual practice found in parts of medieval Europe is something called trial by ordeal. Today, it sounds almost unbelievable. People believe that God will protect an innocent person. So, someone accused of a crime may be asked to undergo a difficult test, perhaps carrying a piece of hot iron, or placing a hand into boiling water. After several days, the wound is examined. If it heals well, that is taken as a sign of innocence. If it becomes badly infected, the result is seen very differently. Looking back today, this seems incredibly unfair. And eventually, many parts of Europe stop using these ordeals altogether. As legal systems become more organized, courts rely more on evidence, witnesses, and formal procedures. Prisons also exist, but perhaps not in the way you imagine. Long-term prison sentences are actually less common than they are today. Many jails are simply places where people are held while waiting for trial or punishment. Keeping prisoners for years is expensive. Most medieval governments would rather settle the case another way. One thing that keeps many villages peaceful is something stronger than fear. Community. Everyone depends on one another. The farmer needs the blacksmith. The blacksmith needs the carpenter. The carpenter needs the miller. If trust disappears, daily life becomes much harder. That is why honesty has real value. People remember who keeps their promises. They also remember who does not. Of course, crime never disappears completely. Traveling merchants worry about highway robbers. Busy towns attract pickpockets. Sometimes corrupt officials abuse their power. The medieval world has its share of dishonest people, just like every age before and after it. Still, most ordinary villagers spend far more time worrying about weather, crops, and feeding their families than planning clever crimes. Life is already difficult enough. As the court empties and the village square grows quiet once more, merchants begin opening their stalls again. Farmers return to their work. Children resume their games. Another ordinary day continues. Because while justice helps keep order, something else keeps the medieval world moving every single day. Coins pass from one hand to another. Markets fill with goods from near and far. Traveling merchants arrive with carts full of treasures most villagers have never seen. So tomorrow, we will follow the busiest roads once again and discover how money, markets, and trade connected the medieval world in ways that might surprise you. As the village court grows quiet, another part of the town is becoming louder. The marketplace. If there is one place where medieval life truly comes alive, it is here. The air is filled with voices. Wooden carts roll over the uneven streets. Merchants call out to passing customers. Children weave through the crowd, trying very hard not to get lost. And somewhere nearby, someone is almost certainly arguing over the price of a chicken. Some things never change. For many people, market day is the busiest and most exciting day of the week. Small villages often do not have a market every single day. Instead, nearby towns hold weekly markets where people gather to buy, sell, and trade. Farmers arrive early in the morning with wagons full of grain, vegetables, eggs, butter, and cheese. Gardeners bring fresh herbs. Hunters may offer rabbits or deer. Fishermen display their catch on wooden tables, hoping to sell it before the afternoon sun has other plans. The marketplace is a colorful mix of people and goods. One stall sells warm bread. Another offers wool blankets. A blacksmith displays shiny new tools. A potter carefully lines up bowls, cups, and jugs made from clay. Everywhere you look, someone is making a living. But how do people actually pay for these things? Sometimes with coins. Sometimes without them. Coins are used throughout much of medieval Europe, but they are not always easy to get. Most ordinary people do not carry large bags of money. In fact, many families rarely see very many coins at all. The most common coins are made from silver. Gold coins exist too, but they are usually found in the hands of wealthy merchants, nobles, or kings. A single gold coin could be worth far more than an ordinary farmer might earn in many days of work. Because coins are limited, another system remains very common: bartering. Instead of paying with money, people exchange one useful item for another. A farmer may trade a sack of grain for a new pair of shoes. A shepherd might exchange wool for farming tools. A potter could trade several clay bowls for fresh vegetables. No money changes hands. only goods. For people living in small communities, this often works perfectly well. Everyone produces something that someone else needs. Of course, bartering is not always simple. Imagine trying to decide how many onions are equal to one wooden bucket, or how much cheese should be exchanged for a warm winter cloak. The conversations can become interesting. Thankfully, experienced merchants become very good at judging value. As trade grows, towns become richer. Some merchants travel only a few miles from home. Others travel hundreds of miles across Europe. They guide long lines of horses and wagons over rough roads, through forests, across rivers, and over mountain passes. The journey is slow, sometimes dangerous, but the rewards can be great. These traveling merchants bring exciting goods that most villagers rarely see. Silk from the east, fine glass, beautiful jewelry, brightly colored cloth, olive oil, and perhaps the most valuable luxury of all, spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg. Today, you might find these sitting quietly on a kitchen shelf. In the Middle Ages, they are worth a small fortune. A tiny pouch of pepper can cost far more than most people would ever imagine. These spices travel incredible distances before reaching Europe. Ships cross seas. Caravans cross deserts. Merchants pass through many different kingdoms. By the time the spices reach a medieval market, they have already traveled farther than most villagers ever will. Trade connects the world in ways that surprise many people today. Even though travel is slow, ideas and goods still move from one place to another. A merchant may return home with stories of distant cities, strange customs, and people who speak unfamiliar languages. Children gather around to listen. Adults ask questions. For a few moments, the marketplace feels like a window into another world. Keeping all this trade organized is no easy task. That is where the guilds become important once again. A guild is more than a group of skilled workers. It also protects the quality of what is being sold. A baker cannot simply make poor bread and expect customers to return. A blacksmith cannot sell weak tools that break after one day's work. Guilds inspect work, train apprentices, and help maintain good standards. Reputation matters. A merchant known for honest prices earns loyal customers. One known for cheating may soon find people walking right past his stall. Trust is one of the most valuable things anyone can sell. Markets are also places where news spreads quickly. Long before newspapers or the internet, people learn about the wider world by talking to travelers. A merchant might bring word of a distant king. A sailor may describe a storm at sea. A pilgrim shares stories from a famous cathedral hundreds of miles away. Sometimes the stories are completely true. Sometimes, they become a little more exciting each time they are told. Humans have always enjoyed making a good story even better. As afternoon slowly turns toward evening, the marketplace begins to empty. Farmers pack away the goods they could not sell. Merchants count their coins. Children help load carts for the journey home. The streets grow quieter as people leave through the town gates and head back toward their villages. For one more week, business is finished. The marketplace has done its job. It has fed families, supplied craftsmen, shared news, connected strangers, and reminded everyone that even in the Middle Ages, the world is much bigger than the little village where the day began. But after days filled with farming, trading, building, and bargaining, one question remains. How did people relax? Surely life was not all work. As the sun begins to sink behind the rooftops and the evening grows cooler, music starts drifting through the streets. Someone is telling a story. Someone else is laughing. And somewhere nearby, a game of dice is about to become far more competitive than anyone expected. Let us spend the evening discovering how medieval people entertain themselves after a long day's work. The sun is finally beginning to disappear behind the hills. The day's work is done. The oxen have been led back to their barns. The blacksmith has let the fire in his forge grow quiet. The marketplace is almost empty. For the first time since dawn, people can finally slow down. And after working from sunrise until evening, they have earned it. Many people imagine that life in the Middle Ages was nothing but endless work. Work in the fields, work in the house, work in the workshop, then straight to bed. The truth is a little more cheerful than that. Medieval people enjoyed relaxing just as much as we do. They simply had different ways of doing it. As darkness slowly settles over the village, families gather around the fireplace. The flames crackle softly. Shadows dance across the wooden walls. This is the perfect time for stories. Long before television, long before radio, and long before someone could spend 3 hours watching videos about ancient Rome at 2 o'clock in the morning, stories were entertainment. Grandparents tell tales they heard when they were children. Parents share old legends. Travelers describe strange places they have visited. Some stories are true. Others become just a little more exciting every time they are told. A fisherman who caught one large fish somehow remembers it becoming twice as big by the following winter. Human nature has not changed very much. Many stories are passed from one generation to the next without ever being written down. Heroes battle dragons. Saints perform miracles. Wise kings solve impossible problems. Clever peasants outsmart greedy nobles. Each storyteller adds small details of their own. No two versions are exactly alike. Music is another important part of evening life. Someone picks up a simple wooden flute. Another plays a small harp. A drummer taps out a steady rhythm. Soon, voices join in. People sing songs they have known for years. Some celebrate love. Some remember famous battles. Others are simply cheerful tunes that everyone knows by heart. You do not need a grand concert hall to enjoy music. A warm fire and good company are more than enough. During festivals, the music grows louder. People begin to dance. Men, women, and children join hands in circles or long lines, moving together while musicians play lively tunes. No one worries about having perfect dance steps. The goal is simply to enjoy the evening. After weeks of hard work, these celebrations feel well-deserved. Children, of course, find their own ways to have fun. Even after finishing chores, they still have energy somehow. They race one another through open fields, play games with hoops, throw stones at carefully chosen targets, or invent entirely new games using nothing more than sticks and imagination. Children have always been experts at turning almost anything into a toy. Adults enjoy games as well. One popular choice is dice. Simple dice carved from bone or would appear in homes, inns, and marketplaces across Europe. Friends gather around a table. The dice roll. Someone cheers. Someone groans. Someone quietly insists that they would have won if the dice had only bounced one more time. Sound familiar? Some games never really disappear. Board games are also popular. Chess arrives in Europe during the Middle Ages and slowly becomes a favorite among nobles and wealthy merchants. The game rewards patience and careful thinking. Of course, not everyone has time to become a chess master. Many families play much simpler games that require only pebbles, wooden pieces, or a smooth board scratched into the table. Entertainment does not have to be expensive. Sometimes the greatest excitement comes from watching traveling performers. Now and then, musicians, jugglers, storytellers, or acrobats arrive in town. A crowd quickly gathers. Children push toward the front for a better view. Adults smile as the performer balances knives, sings funny songs, or tells stories that make everyone laugh. For a little while, the worries of daily life seem to disappear. The village alehouse is another place where people gather after work. Despite what some movies suggest, it is not always filled with shouting and flying chairs. Most evenings are much quieter. Neighbors sit together over mugs of small ale. They discuss the weather, talk about the harvest, share news from nearby towns, or simply enjoy sitting beside a warm fire after a long day. If someone begins telling a funny story, the whole room may burst into laughter. If someone starts singing, well, soon everyone else joins in, whether they know the words or not. The calendar also brings many special celebrations throughout the year. Harvest festivals are among the happiest. The hardest work is finally finished. Barns are full. Food has been stored for winter. People feel relieved. There is music, dancing, good food, things. Sometimes friendly competitions such as wrestling, archery, or simple races bring the whole village together. Winning is nice. Bragging about winning is even better. Holiday celebrations connected with the church are just as important. Christmas, Easter, saints' feast days. Each offers families a chance to gather, enjoy better meals than usual, and spend time together. For many people, these celebrations become treasured memories that return year after year. Even during quiet evenings at home, entertainment often means simply being together. Someone repairs clothing beside the fire. Another carves a wooden spoon. A child falls asleep while listening to a story for perhaps the 100th time. Outside, the stars slowly appear above the village. The busy sounds of the day begin to fade. It is easy to forget how dark the medieval world becomes after sunset. There are no streetlights, no glowing shop windows, no bright screens lighting every room. Only candles, firelight, and the moon overhead. In many ways, evenings feel slower, calmer. People talk more because there are fewer distractions. The simple act of sharing time together becomes entertainment all by itself. Perhaps that is one reason so many stories survive for hundreds of years. They are told again, and again, and again, around countless fires on countless evenings, long before anyone imagined the modern world. As the fire burns lower and families begin preparing for sleep, another thought quietly enters the mind. Life can be joyful, but it is also uncertain. A single bad harvest, a serious illness, a harsh winter, any of these can change everything. And tomorrow, we will explore the fears, dangers, and remarkable resilience that shaped everyday life in the Middle Ages. As the last voices fade and the village grows quiet, it is easy to imagine that life in the Middle Ages is peaceful. The fire burns low. The stars shine overhead. The animals have settled down for the night. Everything feels calm. And most nights, it is. But beneath that peaceful picture, there is something every medieval family understands. Life is uncertain. Tomorrow is never promised. Today, if something goes wrong, help is often only a phone call away. An ambulance can arrive within minutes. Food can be bought at the nearest store. Medicine is available at the local pharmacy. For a medieval family, life is very different. Many problems have no quick solution, and some have no solution at all. Perhaps the greatest worry is the harvest. Everything depends on it. The wheat growing in the fields, the vegetables in the garden, the apples hanging from the trees. If the harvest is good, families eat through the winter. If it is poor, everyone begins to worry. Too much rain can flood the fields. Too little rain leaves the crops dry and weak. A sudden frost can destroy vegetables almost overnight. Strong winds flatten grain that was nearly ready to harvest. Even insects can become a serious threat. Imagine spending months planting, watering, and caring for your crops, only to watch nature undo all of that work in a single week. That is a reality many medieval farmers know all too well. Food shortages are never far from people's minds. When supplies begin to run low, meals become smaller. Bread is cut into thinner slices. Pottage contains more water than vegetables. Families carefully count every sack of grain stored in the barn. Parents often make sure children eat first. Adults quietly pretend they are not hungry. It is a small act of kindness repeated in countless homes throughout history. Winter brings its own challenges. The days become shorter. The nights grow colder. Snow covers the roads. Travel becomes difficult. Firewood disappears faster than anyone would like. Keeping a warm fire burning is no longer just about comfort. It is about survival. Families gather close together inside their homes, sharing blankets and staying near the fireplace. Outside, icy winds sweep across empty fields that only a few months earlier were full of life. Then there is the danger of fire itself. It sounds strange to fear the very thing keeping you warm, but fire is both a friend and an enemy. Most houses are built from wood. Their roofs are covered with dry straw. One careless spark can quickly become a disaster. A single burning cottage may set fire to the next. Then another. Then another. Entire villages and towns have been destroyed this way. When people smell smoke where it should not be, everyone rushes to help. Buckets of water are passed from hand to hand. Neighbors work together because they know the fire threatening one house today could threaten theirs tomorrow. Animals bring another set of dangers. Most are harmless. Cows graze peacefully. Sheep quietly fill the hillsides. Chickens spend most of their time arguing with each other over absolutely nothing. But wild animals still roam forests beyond the village. Wolves are among the most feared. Contrary to popular stories, wolves usually avoid people whenever possible. Still, during harsh winters, hungry packs sometimes come closer to villages searching for food. Shepherds remain watchful. Travelers prefer not to walk alone after dark. The forest holds many unknowns. Illness is another constant companion. Without modern medicine, even common infections can become dangerous. A simple cut from a farming tool may become infected. A fever that seems mild today can become deadly within days. Children are especially vulnerable. Many families experience the heartbreak of losing young children to illnesses we now know how to treat. It is a painful reminder of how fragile life can be. One of the most dangerous moments in medieval life is childbirth. Today, hospitals, trained doctors, and modern medicine make childbirth much safer than it once was. In the Middle Ages, every birth carries real risk. Midwives use the knowledge passed down through generations. Families pray. Neighbors offer help. Sometimes everything goes well. Sometimes it does not. Every healthy birth is celebrated because everyone understands how precious it truly is. Accidents happen often too. A falling tree, a kick from a frightened horse, a sharp axe slipping while chopping wood, a wagon rolling over uneven ground. Hard physical work always carries danger. There are no hard hats, no steel-toed boots, no warning signs reminding you to be careful. Only experience and hope. Perhaps the greatest strength of medieval people is not that they avoid hardship. It is that they learn to live with it. When someone's roof is damaged in a storm, neighbors help repair it. If a family loses part of its harvest, others may share what they can spare. When illness strikes, people bring food, offer prayers, and care for one another. Life is difficult, but it is rarely faced alone. Community becomes one of the greatest forms of protection. Everyone depends on everyone else. That sense of togetherness helps people survive challenges that might otherwise seem impossible. Looking back today, it is easy to focus only on the hardships. The cold, the hunger, the disease, the uncertainty. But that is only part of the story. Medieval people also laugh, celebrate, fall in love, raise families, tell stories around warm fires. find joy in good harvests and peaceful evenings. They do not wake each morning expecting disaster. They simply understand that life is precious because it can change so quickly. As another long day finally comes to an end, candles burn lower inside the cottages. Outside, the village grows silent beneath a sky filled with stars. Doors are locked. Animals settle into their barns. Families whisper their final prayers before climbing into bed. Soon, almost everyone is asleep, or at least, they are beginning their first sleep. Because, surprisingly, medieval nights are a little different from ours. And that is where our journey goes next. The village has finally gone quiet. The blacksmith's hammer is silent. The marketplace is empty. Even the chickens have stopped making their opinions known. Above the rooftops, thousands of stars fill the night sky. Without electric lights, the heavens look brighter than most people today have ever seen. On a clear night, the Milky Way stretches across the sky like a glowing river. It is beautiful, and perhaps just a little humbling. Inside the cottages, the fire has been allowed to burn low. Not completely out, just enough to leave glowing embers for the morning. Starting a fire from scratch every day takes time and effort, so families try to keep at least a little heat alive through the night. The room grows quieter. Candles flicker gently. Their light dances across rough wooden walls before slowly fading away. Candles are useful, but they are not cheap. Most ordinary families cannot afford to burn them for hours without reason. So when darkness comes, people usually go to bed. That may sound early by modern standards, but without bright lights, there is not much reason to stay awake. The day has also been incredibly long. After hours spent farming, cooking, carrying water, repairing tools, or caring for animals, everyone is tired. Very tired. Beds, however, are not quite what you might expect. Poor families often sleep on simple wooden frames or straw-filled mattresses placed on the floor. Fresh straw is added whenever possible to keep the bedding reasonably comfortable. It is certainly not memory foam. But after 12 hours of hard work, almost anything feels comfortable. Wealthier families enjoy softer mattresses stuffed with feathers. Heavy blankets help keep out the cold. Curtains may surround the bed to trap warmth during winter nights. It is a luxury most villagers can only dream about. Entire families often share the same sleeping space. Parents, children, sometimes even grandparents. Privacy, at least by modern standards, is fairly rare. Homes are small. Space is limited. People simply grow accustomed to living close together. Animals may sleep nearby as well. In some cottages, chickens, goats, or even a young calf spend the night inside the house during especially cold weather. It may sound unusual today, but animals produce warmth, and warmth is valuable. The arrangement is not exactly quiet, or particularly fragrant. Still, nobody complains too much when the alternative is freezing. One interesting detail about medieval sleep surprises many historians. Some evidence suggests that many people do not sleep straight through the night. Instead, they experience what researchers sometimes call first sleep and second sleep. After sunset, people fall asleep for several hours. Then, sometime around the middle of the night, many naturally wake up. For an hour or two, they may pray, talk quietly, check on the fire, think about tomorrow's work, or simply sit peacefully in the darkness. Eventually, they return to bed for a second period of sleep before dawn arrives. This pattern seems perfectly ordinary to them. It is only later, with changing work schedules and artificial lighting, that people begin sleeping in one long stretch. Outside, the village is darker than almost anything we experience today. There are no streetlights, no glowing windows from hundreds of nearby houses, no cars passing by with bright headlights. The moon becomes incredibly important. When it is full, travelers can still find their way along familiar paths. When clouds cover the sky, the darkness feels almost complete. Traveling at night is usually avoided whenever possible. Roads are rough. Bridges are narrow. Forests hide many dangers, both real and imagined. If someone absolutely must travel after sunset, they carry a lantern or torch and hope the weather remains kind. Night also brings plenty of stories. Children listen wide-eyed as older relatives speak about mysterious creatures said to wander the forests. Ghosts, fairies, witches, spirits. Legends differ from one village to another, but nearly every community has its own collection of nighttime tales. Whether people truly believe every story is another question. But they certainly make children think twice before wandering into the woods after dark. Of course, the night is not always peaceful. A baby may begin crying. A dog suddenly starts barking outside. Someone wakes because of a thunderstorm rolling across the countryside. Heavy rain beats against the thatched roof while lightning briefly lights the room. Everyone quietly hopes the roof holds until morning. Winter nights feel especially long. The wind whistles through tiny cracks in the walls. Families pull blankets closer. The fire is checked one last time. Outside, frost slowly covers the fields that only months ago were filled with golden grain. Summer nights are very different. Windows may be left open to let cooler air inside. Crickets sing in the grass. The scent of herbs drifts in from the garden. Some evenings are so peaceful that the only sound is the gentle breathing of a sleeping household. As midnight passes, nearly the entire village rests beneath the stars. Tomorrow will bring another day of work. Another sunrise. Another trip to the fields. Another loaf of bread. Another bucket of water from the well. Life follows a steady rhythm, one day flowing into the next. To modern eyes, that routine may seem repetitive, but for the people living it, each ordinary day is quietly meaningful. Each season brings new challenges. Each harvest brings fresh hope. Each evening offers another chance to gather around the fire with family. As the eastern horizon slowly begins to lighten, the rooster prepares for another enthusiastic performance. He has exactly one job, and he intends to do it with great confidence. Soon, the entire village will wake once again. But before our own journey through medieval daily life comes to an end, there is one final morning waiting for us. Let us step outside one last time and look back at the remarkable ordinary lives that shaped an extraordinary age. The sky is beginning to brighten once again. A pale orange glow appears along the horizon. The stars slowly fade. The morning mist returns to the fields. And right on schedule, the rooster announces another new day with all the confidence of someone who believes the sun rises because he personally asked it to. Some things never change. The village begins to wake. Smoke curls gently from the chimneys. A cottage door creaks open. A woman walks toward the well with empty buckets. A farmer stretches his tired back before picking up yesterday's tools. Children, still rubbing sleep from their eyes, slowly climb out of bed. Yesterday is over. Today begins again. If you have stayed with me through this long, quiet journey, you may notice something. Almost nothing about this morning is different from the one we experienced at the very beginning. And that is exactly the point. For most medieval people, life is built on routine. Not because they lack imagination, but because routine keeps everyone alive. The fire must be lit. The animals must be fed. The fields must be worked. The bread must be baked. The water must be carried. The chores waiting this morning are the very same ones waiting yesterday. And they will still be waiting tomorrow. History books often focus on kings, queens, great battles, powerful castles, and famous knights riding across the countryside. Those stories are exciting. They deserve to be remembered. But they are only a small part of the medieval world. Most people never wear a crown. Most never hold a sword in battle. Most never speak with a king. Instead, they live ordinary lives. They plant wheat, raise children, repair roofs, bake bread, care for neighbors, pray together, laugh together, grow old together. It is these ordinary people who quietly build the world around them. The farmer grows food that feeds the village. The blacksmith makes the tools that shape the fields. The carpenter builds the homes where families sleep. The miller grinds grain into flour. The baker turns that flour into bread. The shepherd watches over the sheep. The weaver makes warm clothing for winter. The priest comforts the sick. The mother keeps the household running. The children slowly learn every skill they will need one day. Each person depends on someone else. Remove one piece, and the whole village begins to struggle. That may be one of the greatest lessons medieval life has to teach us. Community matters. People survive because they work together. A poor harvest is shared. A damaged roof is repaired with helping hands. When illness comes, neighbors bring food. When celebrations arrive, everyone joins together. No one succeeds completely alone. Modern life often feels incredibly fast. Phones buzz. Cars race down highways. Messages travel across the world in seconds. Many of us rush from one task to another without ever slowing down. The medieval world moves differently. The seasons decide the pace. Sunrise begins the day. Sunset ends it. There is no shortcut for growing wheat. No faster way to bake bread over a wood fire. No machine to carry water from the well. Everything takes time. Perhaps that slower rhythm is one reason we find it so fascinating today. It reminds us of a world where people paid close attention to nature. They watched the weather. They noticed the changing seasons. They understood that every harvest depended on patience as much as hard work. Of course, we should not pretend medieval life is easy. It is not. People work incredibly hard. Disease remains dangerous. Winters can be harsh. Food is sometimes scarce. Many comforts we take for granted simply do not exist. If someone offered you the chance to move permanently into a medieval village tomorrow, you might politely decline after remembering there is no indoor plumbing, or coffee maker, or soft mattress, or internet, especially the internet. Still, despite all the hardships, people continue to find happiness. Children laugh while chasing each other across open fields. Families gather around warm fires. Music fills the village during festivals. Fresh bread comes out of the oven. Neighbors celebrate weddings. Church bells ring across the countryside. The seasons continue their endless cycle. Life goes on. Perhaps that is the biggest surprise of all. The Middle Ages are often imagined as a dark and miserable time. But everyday life is much more balanced than that. There is hardship. There is joy. There is sorrow. There is hope. Just like today. The faces are different. The clothes are different. The tools are different. But the people are surprisingly familiar. Parents worry about their children. Young people dream about the future. Friends laugh together after a long day. Families gather around the dinner table. Neighbors help one another through difficult times. Across hundreds of years, those simple human moments have never really disappeared. As the village becomes fully awake once again, the sounds of another ordinary day begin to fill the air. The blacksmith's hammer rings in the distance. A dog barks. The mill wheel starts turning. Someone calls the children inside for breakfast. A horse pulls a wooden cart toward the fields. Smoke rises gently into the cool morning sky. The world keeps moving, just as it has for centuries. And now, as our own quiet walk through medieval daily life comes to an end, it is time for us to leave the village exactly as we found it. Busy, peaceful, hardworking, full of ordinary people living extraordinary lives without ever realizing history would remember them. So, as you settle a little deeper into your chair, or perhaps a little deeper into your pillow, let the sounds of the village slowly fade away. The rooster has finished his morning announcement. The fields are waiting. The baker is already kneading fresh dough. The church bell rings softly across the countryside. And somewhere, a farmer takes one last look at the rising sun before beginning another day that will seem completely ordinary, yet will quietly become another small piece of history. Thank you for joining me on this gentle journey through the everyday world of the Middle Ages. Sleep well. And perhaps, tonight, dream of a little village where the bread is always warm, the stars shine brilliantly overhead, and tomorrow begins with the crow of one very confident rooster.